Hi everyone, and thanks for listening in today. We're joined today on this FFEM monthly content session with Jackie Lockie, Director at Lockie Consultants. And I'm sure many of you know Jackie or recognise her face. She supports financial planning professionals who are studying for the Certified Financial Planner certification, the CFP in the UK, and they also partner with small and medium-sized financial planning firms to build and manage clear career pathways. So welcome, Jackie. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. Looking forward to this session, Gretchen.
Great. And so, yes, Joe's going to have our discussion today with Jackie. So I'll hand over to Joe and we'll jump straight in.
Thanks, Jackie. So thanks for joining us. Obviously, the topic of today is about managing upwards, and just for my benefit and everybody else as well, what is managing upwards and who should be doing that?
Okay, so managing upwards is essentially building a better relationship with the people directly above you if you're working in a bigger firm. So essentially your boss or your line manager. And you can equally apply the principles that we're going to talk about today if you are working with other teams in your firm, or maybe even if you're have a relationship with other financial professionals like accountants and solicitors who are, maybe business owners themselves. Then you can apply everything that we're going to talk about today to those equally as well.
Right,
who should do it? Well, I think everybody should do it. I kind of wish, as I'm going to tell you my tales as we go along today, I kind of wish that I had started it when I was a lot younger and realized the processes that I could have put in place to help myself to build better relationships with the bosses that I worked with over the years. So I think you're never too old or too young to learn some of these and start actually just applying them, internalize them yourself and then apply them for your own long-term benefit, but also the benefit of the firms that you're working with.
Brilliant. So what are the benefits of learning to manage upwards then, Jackie? I know you said it's something that you should have known earlier. What's really the power of that?
So it's really about, everybody, we all behave in a different way. We all listen and learn in a slightly different way. You've seen, I'm sure that you're aware of NLP, and you can, some of us are audio people, some of us like to see it in action, some of us like to read things as we learn. And I always imagine that each of us are, it's kind of sound a bit like an alien now, but you've kind of got your own antennae on your head, and it's pointing in the direction that you naturally maybe are brought up with, and partly because of your genes. So the way that you receive feedback and give out feedback and interact with people is basically from this antennae that is pointing in a particular direction that you've diverted it into. And what happens is when you're dealing with other people, their antennae can be pointing in a different direction. So you don't actually hear what they're saying, and you don't, or maybe you catch a little bit of it and then you think, oh gosh, I've got to deliver on the basis of what I think I've heard. And then you just dive in to do it. So actually the benefits can be that if you have your antennae, or you can move your antennae to pointing in the right direction, then you can understand your bosses better. You can understand the people you work alongside a lot better. So that aids communication and relationship building and team building. Now, the ramifications of that can be quite significant, because if your boss understands you, then if something bad happens in the firm, we all make mistakes. I'm not going to pretend that I haven't made mistakes. This is listed on your arm of the mistakes I've made over the years, but we all make mistakes. And when we make those mistakes, if you have a boss that understands you and appreciates you, and you're honest with them, and you are approachable and they're approachable, then even in your absence, they will fight your corner. They will give you the benefit of the doubt. And that's all you can ask for in a firm when something like that happens, is you want somebody to give you a fair shout, a fair explanation of, what went wrong essentially, and what you're going to do about it to fix it, obviously. Also, building on from that, it means because you're building your credibility and your visibility in the firm that you're working with, you're more likely to gain a promotion, and whatever shape or form that might be. It might be, you know, monetary, it might be a different role or position within that firm as well. Maybe taking on more responsibility with clients, for example. You know, there are a number of different aspects that can benefit for you long term. One of the other things that I found from managing upwards, which helped me enormously, is that my bosses tended to be less micromanaging with me. So, you know, I think when we all start a job, don't we, you know, if you've got a boss and they're, you know, they're kind of leaning right over you, essentially, metaphorically speaking, hopefully not literally, and they are showing you the ropes and testing you, and you're going away and, you know, learning a bit of information, coming straight back with it. And as you grow as a person and develop these managing upward skills, you will find that that naturally starts to fall away. So you feel then that you have much more flexibility and freedom in the workplace, so you can articulate yourself and you're trusted to get on with the work that you're doing.
Brilliant. So it sounds like there's a lot of trust built in with the communication channels that you build with various different people.
Yeah.
And then as that starts to mature, that can take you places. Again, you said people fighting your corner. So that's great. So going back to people's antennas are pointing in different directions.
Yeah.
Could you give us an explanation of some various ways of how you can identify and then start to move into building those communication channels?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing to do is identify yourself, how you like to learn, and how you, if there was a problem and you had a problem with your boss, just hypothetically think through what you would do about it right now. So, you know, if somebody upset you and you wanted to go and have a moan at your boss, I've worked with people who are Friday afternoon moaners, who will be silent all week and then come about 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. They phone you up and they absolutely go hell for leather at you. And you just kind of hold the phone away from your ear and think, oh, crikey, you know, and it's just kind of like a brain dump of all the kind of irritations that that person has had during the week. And whilst I'm sure that, you know, they say a problem shared is a problem halved, but from that person's point of view, are they handling it the best way? And if that's the way that you do it, are you handling that the best way? Is there a better way to do it? And you've got to understand what your natural reactions are and be honest about it. So there is a bit of interflection, if you like, and just thinking about how you're going to handle yourself. And also the other things you've got to do, you've got to get to know your boss and how they behave. So get to know them and understand what their management style is. So sometimes you will have a boss who kind of flies in, you know, flies in, dumps stuff, flies out again. If you have a boss like that, then you're not going to be able to have a Friday afternoon rant at them, even if you thought that that was an appropriate thing to do, because they're not going to be there. So how are you going to build a relationship with somebody who zooms in, plonks stuff down and zooms out again? You know, are you going to email them on a regular basis? Do you have, you know, we're going to talk about in a little while some structures that I could suggest that you could put into place, that if you're communicating with them on a remote basis, you're not just kind of typing away furiously, having a rant on the keyboard, that you can structure your arguments and things that you want to say. So then as you build that relationship with the boss, you understand how they like to be dealt with, essentially. And, you know, there's that phrase, isn't there, that, you know, treat people as you would like to be treated. And actually, I think that phrase is wrong, because we should treat people how they would like to be treated. So by getting to know your boss and find out, you know, do they like you coming in? I had one boss a while ago who he would make decisions if he saw you, and it wasn't necessarily on a Friday afternoon, but it would always be about 5 o'clock. And so if you were still in the office at 5 o'clock, even if you were getting your coat on, some days I would still be in the office at 6:30, talking to him about some of the issues, and we were trying to work out how to solve the that solved the problems that we had. And that was his way. If you'd gone in at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, he would have been, no, I can't do this right now. So you've got to understand how to approach that situation, when's a good time and when's a bad time. One of the other things to do is to always get clarification and to ask questions to make sure that if he's asking you to do something, maybe it's a new project to research or something like that, or if you come up with an idea, how are you going to present it? So clarify with your boss exactly what it is that they want and in what format that they want. And even if they want it verbally, then I will talk through in a second a list of an approach. So you can set out this approach either verbally if you want to, if that's the way that they prefer it, or you can write a very kind of one-page mini report, if you like, that you can send to them, perhaps in advance of a particular important meeting that they're going to, or maybe you're both going to, but it sets out things in a clear and fair fashion. The next thing is to be consistent. So with your behaviors, the way that to demonstrate that you know what you're talking about, and essentially as you're growing your authority and dealing with your boss, is always to be consistent. And that goes back to some of the points we've already mentioned about honestly understanding where your triggers are and what your behaviors are and how they want to interact with you, so that they can start to rely on what you're going to say. And then you'll find the results of that mean that they will probably bring you into conversations much earlier in the process, rather than you kind of think, oh, a decision's been made, but what about all of these things? Nobody's thought about any of that. And if you start to be consistent in your behaviors and take on board the way that they want to be approached and to have presentations or whatever it is given to them, then they will start to think, well, hang on a minute. I know that Jackie is the person who likes to think ahead, who will be better prepared. And if I am the type of boss, and they will realize this, who kind of goes in the meeting and kind of makes sudden decisions and comes out again, then actually having somebody who is better prepared, who's had chance to think these things through, who can also arm them with the information to think it through, help their teams think it through, then you become an invaluable person in that business. So as far as structure goes, here's a few top tips for me. If you're asked to do something or you want to put forward a case, maybe in your firm that you're working in, instead of having your Friday afternoon rant, you think there's a specific procedure that you want to change, that is definitely that you found a better way of doing it. So instead of just flying off and going, right, we need to do this and have a little paddy about it until you kind of get your own way, let's look through a better process. So the first thing is, don't guess whether, if you're asked to research for something, if you're only been given part of the issue and you've got any other questions, or have you done it before, for example? Has the firm approached this topic before? Have they tackled this procedure before? Did it work last time? Or maybe it didn't work. What were the reasons why it didn't work before? So don't just assume that you have invented the next new procedure, the next sliced bread known to man. They might have already gone through an iteration in the firm before you arrived, and there were particular reasons why it didn't work. That doesn't mean to say that that procedure might not work again, because obviously times change, businesses change. But it's good to take on board to ask those extra questions to find out whether anything like that has happened before. Then have a structure. And so here's my structure. Identify what it is that you're trying to achieve. So you say you've got a new procedure that you think you should be put into place in the firm that you're working with. So identify exactly what it is. Then you want a paragraph or so on the things to consider. Has it been done before? Can you look at it from somebody else's point of view? What's going to be the impact on other people in the team, or maybe other relationships and businesses that you're working with? So don't just look at it from your point of view and think, oh, it's going to be easier for me all round if I just make sure that this goes into place. and actually it's going to be a nightmare for half a dozen other people that you're working with, then as soon as they speak out, you know that that's not going to happen. So you're essentially wasting your time. So your ability to be able to look at it, look at this particular issue from everybody else's point of view, really the people who are going to be impacted most by it is going to be invaluable. And it's certainly in team meetings I've been in, you might have a boss who, listens to everybody arguing and then just kind of makes a decision. But actually, if you can set out a little mini report where you have already considered things from other people's point of view, and okay, yes, maybe it does cause them a little bit more work, but maybe not as much work as they might naturally, if they kind of got their backs up about it, what they might think. And you can actually articulate and set out what the changes might be for other people. And so then you can put forward a much more balanced case and a more balanced argument to get your boss to agree to something like that. So I kind of think of it as like a mini one-page proposal, if you like. What could be the final thing to do would be to think about what could be the results of it. Could it be increased productivity for the business, streamlining costs? If you're working in a financial planning firm, maybe that would give all of the staff, maybe they get leave work half an hour earlier on a Friday afternoon or an hour earlier or something like that. Maybe it would give the firm more potential to take on more clients in the long run, just by making essentially some efficiency savings, for example. So there are lots of things that you can put in place, and that kind of mini schedule, if you like, a kind of mini one-page proposal. Now, I'm not saying that in every case you kind of go in waving your one piece of paper, or you spend your Friday afternoon typing something up and then whack it on the email. A lot of this is about how you behave and how you process it, and looking at the challenges of your own kind of issues that you have, how you might articulate it. So whether you say, if you go through that process, which I certainly wish that I had done many moons ago when I started in the financial planning world, I think it would have enabled me as actually an introvert, although don't tell everybody, but naturally I am an introvert, and I find it quite exhausting battling with people in meetings when you've got half a dozen people who are all trying to put their own views in, and you've got one boss who you're trying to influence to make a good decision. It can be very exhausting for many of us. So having that process in place where you can send something off beforehand really helps people. And I think also one of the other things that you can do finally is, if you can see something on the horizon where something is happening and you think that there could potentially be a bad situation looming, maybe it hasn't happened yet, but you can then get into position with your boss that you can approach them and talk to about potential problems that could be arising. So that is different, I must stress, from like dropping somebody else in it, because that isn't going to build any relationships at all. So this is not about going, oh, well, Joe, he's up to mischief and he's just causing havoc and I've had enough of him. So I'm going to go in and moan to my boss about his behavior this week, and I'm, hands on hips kind of thing. That doesn't work. You've got to behave as a team player, but you can work with other teams and with your boss to say, okay, well, these are the things that are happening at the moment. These are my concerns, and this is a potential ramifications of what's happening. It doesn't mean to say, you don't mention names or anything like that. You just set out the high level issues of how you might see it. And then you can say, okay, well, there are some potential things that we could fix or tweak along the way that might help ease, a negative impact of that happening.
Yeah, that's great. I can understand there's some real key factors in there in getting this right. But when you do, you've considered how you're going to communicate with people. You've considered their perspective. It then allows you to sort of mediate and navigate that space a little bit better, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So that's great, Jackie. There's some great tips in there. So if we start applying this, how will you know that you're doing it right? How will you measure your success of going, I'm that team player that's helping drive things and managing upwards and helping us progress?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that when you start doing this, it won't work every time. And some people might look at you like you've got two heads. You've got to internalize it and make it your own, this process. And, really reflect each time you try it on your own behavior. And if you can build a better relationship with your boss, to ask them for feedback. And so that you can say, okay, well, maybe I can tweak my own behavior as I'm going along. And certainly over the years, that's one of the things that some of my bosses have said to me, compared to other people who were working at the same kind of level, other team leaders in bigger firms, certainly, was that I was one of the few people who would sit back and say, okay, well, what could I do differently? How could I change my behavior to help accommodate others and to help demonstrate that I am looking at things from other people's point of view? So it's more about, just trying and keep trying little steps in order to build it up. And then what will happen is a lot of the things that we've talked about before, you will be brought into meetings earlier. You will be part of the decision process, which I think, can frustrate a lot of us when decisions are made over your head. And you can be part of that process, so you can be respected in the firm. There are a couple of websites that are worth looking at. One of my favorite ones is called crazyforchange.com. I don't know if you've seen that. Another certified financial planner, a very old, long-standing one actually, Jeremy, he has this website that's got quite a lot of inspirational articles about how to manage yourself and looking at yourself, self-reflection, and how to do it as well. There are numerous books out there, but a lot of these articles are kind of quite short and snappy and easy to digest. So worth having a look at that website as well. But I think asking your boss for feedback and also thanking them for the support. And I think a lot of bosses don't get thanked very often because normally they're kind of the bad person having to make the decision. And actually, if you're working, you want to create that team environment, and actually thanking them for the help and support that they're going to give you. It has a disproportionately large impact on them because they don't actually get thanked very often. So I think it's a really important thing to do.
That's great, Jackie. As you've been speaking now and explaining, it's a bit around self-awareness and yourself. I've been thinking, gosh, I can think where people probably managed upwards with me and got a result because they understand when's the best time to approach Joe for a decision. What do I need to have ready to get that area of success? And it's now making me think, yeah, if I want to do more of this, looking at yourself initially is a great place to start, and figuring out which way your antennas pointing to give you an insight into others as well.
Yeah. And so, for example, I many moons ago, when I first started working in the financial planning world, I definitely had my antenna pointing the other way. And one of my bosses used to say to me, well done, Jackie, that was a great job. I didn't hear well done. I heard next. What's the next job? And I found it really tough to take on the credit because essentially I hadn't realized that my antenna was pointing in a completely different direction. So they were talking in that direction and I was looking over there. I didn't hear it at all. So I was always so self-critical, and without a bit of self-reflection and thinking, well, I have done a good job, but, maybe I haven't done a great job. I could have done better. What could I have done better? And I think it's those kinds of things. You have to have the courage and trust in yourself that, working with other people is extremely enjoyable. That if you can see it from somebody else's point of view and take them along with you on that journey, then you can develop now and become, hugely influential leaders of the future. But you've got to start somewhere. So you've got to keep trying all of these different things and just go, okay, maybe it didn't quite work. Maybe maybe I didn't check properly exactly what it is I was being asked to research, for example. Maybe I was too frightened to go back and clarify properly. And actually you end up in a completely different place. And then you put all that effort in and you send them a report and they go, what? you know, this isn't what I asked for, Jackie. You go, sorry, you know, and you got to go back over it again. So sometimes there will be, you know, a little pain from your point of view because you haven't got the confidence to go through all of those steps initially. But the point is just trying. And as you keep trying, things will get easier. And you will be surprised that if you go in with that positive mindset, people change their attitude towards you. And then you will find that people, maybe if you're working in a bigger firm with other departments, will come and ask you for advice. So it's all about, you know, there's that phrase, isn't it? Be the change that you want to see. You know, there are lots of phrases like that, but actually it's really true that you kind of think, oh, maybe, you know, I'm doing all of this. Am I really getting anywhere? But actually you can get somewhere. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time for everybody else to start to think, oh, wow, Jackie's doing that. She's looking at it from my point of view. Maybe I should start looking at it from her point of view. And then, you know, that's really where you start to influence the change across the entire business then.
Yeah, I can see that. It has almost a ripple effect as you nurture these relationships. You can naturally see by, as you said, it can be painful, maybe qualifying or clarifying what you need to do, but in the long run, that will build much more trust and rapport. Yeah. And those conversations will start to vanish, won't they, as you say, over time, because you get to know how one another works. And then that will have a ripple effect.
Definitely. And the thing is, one thing I've always done, and sometimes to my detriment, is I've always been honest when something's gone wrong. Now, you will come across other people in life who are not honest when something goes wrong, and they run for the hills, and they will leave you to, you know, face the full consequences of their combined actions with your combined actions. And they'll say, nothing to do with me, girl. Oh, it was all her. It was all her. And there are people like that. And you've got to find a way to deal with those people and think, well, okay, if you can try and see things from their point of view and act appropriately and do the best that you can, then not everything will work out. But if you have that relationship with your boss and you kind of go in and go, hands up, gov, yeah, this has gone a bit sideways. I've been thinking about this. I think these are the sorts of things that I can do. Can you help me clarify what we can do and the ramifications to fix it? You know, because not everything goes 100% perfectly, as much as we would always love it. And then what you'll find is your boss will look at it and they will say, as has been said to me, well, this isn't just about you, Jackie. The other people had a hand in what went wrong here as well. But you're actually proactively trying to look at it from their point of view and trying to fix it. So then that singles you out as a future leader because you are taking it on the chin, even though you kind of think, oh, this isn't fair. And I have a number of conversations about that sort of thing, that, you know, why does it have to be me that essentially sticking my neck out? And it isn't fair what's happening. But actually your bosses will know that it isn't just you. And therefore you will gain the respect for standing up for yourself and essentially standing up for the other people who are busy off running for the hills.
Yeah.
Can I say something, Jackie? There's a couple of things that have kind of cropped up throughout you speaking. There's like a bit of a message as well, or a theme to this. It's like what you were saying earlier about going, you know, saying, you know, this has happened, hands up, this has happened, but then following up, as you said, but this is what I think we could do about it. Bringing the solution. I always remember, you know, a boss of mine saying, you'd never just bring me the problem. Don't want to just hear the problem. I want to hear, how could we fix it? What have you been thinking? What have you put in place? What should we put in place? And I think that also is what you were saying earlier on about, you know, maybe a mini business plan. All of those things like show that maturity of you thinking about the next level that you might want to get to. It's always a bit like, I always remember in one of my old jobs, they laid out very, very well the career, or at least like what I needed to do to get to the next step. But they were all like quite soft facts, but they were all like, you know, thinking about the bigger picture, thinking about the business, thinking about the problem solving. And so that helped me loads, like when I was moving through in my career. I think that, you know, you don't always get that. And so we're kind of trying to put some meat on the bones for people about what they can do if you don't have that kind of thing in place. But I think, yeah, always delivering the solution to a problem is a good place to start.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? You know, you can come in with what you think is going to be the solution. It might not end up being the solution, but it's kind of like, I mean, one of the places I worked with, we were trying to write a fact sheet for the public. And we ended up writing 81 versions of a fact sheet. And I was tasked with helping one of the directors write this fact sheet. Well, 81 versions. Oh my God. It was just the pain of it was awful. It does 81 versions of like six sides of A4. It went round and round and round, and every director had a say. Everybody else had a say. Oh, don't put that there. Oh, that should be a full stop there. I'm like, you know. But at the end of the day, you've got to try. And I learned so much from that. From if I had helped the other director, if collectively we had looked at it from everybody else's point of view, which we didn't, and then we had tried to accumulate and integrate all of those different aspects of different jobs that they were doing into this, then there wouldn't have been 81 versions. And now the public doesn't know there was 81 versions, and luckily it's still on the website, and I'm not going to tell you where, but it is still on the website. And I'm extremely proud of it. I polished my halo because it took, oh gosh, how many painful hours. And I ended up giving each of the directors a different coloured pen so that they could scribble on it, because they had to scribble on the hard copy. But then I would have like 10 hard copies with all different coloured pens. So then I gave them one copy, and it went round to each of the directors with a different coloured pen. And then they were crossing out each other's comments. And then I was like, oh my God, you know, where do I go now?
Too many cooks here.
Yes, it was. But the problem is, because everybody had a stake in it, they were all entitled to have their say. And there comes a point in the end where, being in charge of a project, you have to make that decision. And that's basically what your boss is trying to do, to make the decision. This is what goes. These are the critical elements, and this is what's going to happen. So you've got to put yourself in your boss's position, who's kind of been bombarded by all these different people potentially saying, oh, do it this way, or do it that way, or I don't want to do that, or, you know, I'm going to try and shift that on somebody else so I can sit here with my feet on the desk, kind of thing. You know, you get all sorts of different people in life that you will work with as the years go by. But that boss, and potentially could be you being the boss in the future, will have to accommodate and make those kinds of decisions of that, you know, the one version that went out after 81 times round. You know, how did we get there? And so in the end, the way we got there, after making all the mistakes that the pair of us did at the start, we got everybody in one room. And it was an extremely painful experience. But for an hour, we sat down together, and they basically just said, Jackie, you should have done that, you should have done this, should have done that. So I started up with a blank piece of paper and just put some headings down and said, right, what's the matter with this content? Well, there's nothing the matter with it. Right. Well, I forgot around 81 times then. Oh, well, you know, it's just not, you know, well, the structure's wrong. Right. Well, so this is all about the structure then. We were just going round and round about the grammar and structure and things, you know. So you've kind of got to go, okay, well, let's pick it apart. Maybe you start from first principles and work your way back up. Specifically, what's wrong? Is it the structure? Is it, you know, what you're proposing? Because they can't see why you're proposing what you are. You know, right back to your Friday afternoon ranting, that doesn't get anybody anywhere, because you've got to think through what are the ramifications of what you're proposing. So it can be very tricky and very painful to do it. But you know, if I had, after doing those 81 versions, if I'd have just kind of gone, right, enough, on to the next thing, and I hadn't taken on board any of those lessons, then I wouldn't be the person that I am today. And I wouldn't have developed my skills to be able to try and see things from other people's point of view. And you know what? It doesn't always work. Sometimes I don't see things from other people's point of view completely, but I make an effort to try. And if people see you making an effort to try, then more often than not, they will meet you halfway. And if they don't meet you halfway, it actually says more about them than it does about you. But what will happen is your boss will see you trying to meet somebody halfway. And then that's good for you long term and your leadership development skills.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jackie. It's been really good to have you on today. I know there's been loads of content, so we'll write up that and make sure we get it on YouTube as well for everyone. So thank you so much for letting us record today. And the next session is on, hang on, I was just looking at it, but I've been 6th of June. So 6th of June with Zoe Howard from Investec. And so I'll confirm all of that on the group, and I hope that everyone, enjoyed the content today. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.